I am really pleased to be with everyone this morning, and all of you deserve an award for getting up at 9 a.m. to talk about AI music business models. But it is an incredibly important topic. It's one that often gets sort of brushed aside, but it is vital to the future of the music industry, the future of how AI and music will play together, and is part of the whole creative puzzle. So the folks we have at this table represent a bunch of viewpoints that are extremely valuable in a conversation about how AI and business can work together. We have, and I'll let them introduce themselves and present their points of view so that I don't get it wrong, because there's a lot of nuance to all of this. But we have folks representing the consumer side, the direct to creators, and folks creating tools to help creators. We have someone who has a great overview of the industry writ large, both from a creator perspective and sort of what's going on out there at the edges. And we also have someone who's been working with metadata and another side of the business. We often focus on the generative aspect. It's really easy to forget how important AI can be to one of the industry's biggest, secret, nastiest problems, $1 billion worth of problem, which is how do we figure out how to deal with these two copyrights, how to match compositions and recordings, all of that. And I was going to say all that fun stuff, but all the stuff that no one likes to talk about, but that is vital to the interest of every single person involved in music. So I think I will let... I see. I'm gonna try to figure out who's the most caffeinated.
Jeez. Matt Henninger.
All right, we're gonna start. We're just gonna be mean and start with Matt Henninger of Moises / Music AI, who's everyone's gonna give a little 5-minute presentation to sort of orient us to what their company does, where they're coming from, and then we'll have a discussion. All right.
Okay. Just a second. Matt Henninger, head up BD and strategy for Moises. For folks that don't know, Moises is a direct-to-consumer app, million users now worldwide. It started really as a music practice tool, utilizing stem separation, chord detection, lyric detection, things like this to enable you to dissect your favorite song, slow it down, practice learning parts. Over the journey, I've been with the company for about 4 years. And we're finding ourselves drifting into the creator space. How can we leverage these tools? How can we leverage mobile fundamentally to help artists and creators capture that spark of an idea? A lot of what we're dealing with, we talked a little bit yesterday, was sort of what don't we do? Where do we stop? Where do we want these models to sort of hand off ideas and not get too far in the way? But from a business model standpoint, we've run both a B2B and B2C business. So we've seen almost every permutation of it. We've watched sort of legacy companies that are used to API call fees and things like this try and dictate that business model for it. We've seen and adapted subscription fees, freemiums fees, sort of everything, in a way to sort of best serve the creator and the artist. And, I think when everyone started to see these models come out, there was a lot of token-based, credit-based transactions, sort of, because every time you run something through a large AI model, there's compute cost, right? So you have sort of this rub in wanting to give a creator an unlimited access to an unlimited tool, as I think you should have, like as a DAW user, right? That's your safe place. You should be able to keep creating. Well, there is a rub there sometimes because you also have cost for each one of these things. So how do we marry this in a way that the business can survive? And we also are keenly aware of the subscription fatigue that everyone suffers right now. Like the last thing you want is another subscription tagged on to something else that you've purchased, and now you got to keep track of it. And now there's 4 plans, and you didn't know what you did. We see in our user base that fatigue, and that doesn't help adoption, right? If you're trying to really solve a problem in a generative tool or whatever it's going to be, you want it to be used over and over and over. If you take a piece of audio and separate some stems out and don't like it, you should be like, go back, do it again. It's art, right? So it's been an interesting journey. I think it's going to continue to evolve, but we have to be very, very, very focused on it because 1, are we solving a problem? And 2, are you solving it in a way that you can develop a habit, right? And can become part of your workflow without that immediate rub or friction or something that stops that because you become transactional. So time.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for bringing up some of the basic problems such as tokens and costs and APIs and subscriptions versus how AI models work. Is fantastic. And I'm just going to go down the row. I'm sorry. Next is Daniel Rowland.
Don't apologize.
Rowland. Did I get it right? Rowland. I think I probably blew that, right?
Matt said all the cool stuff I was going to say.
I know. Well, the wonderful that Daniel is representing Landr. Landr is one of the OGs in the application of machine learning to music creation. I probably were you guys the first AI powered mastering tool or one of the first?
No, I think certainly at any scale. I think might have been one company that was dabbling, but yeah, we're kind of looked at as the first company to productize anything that actually was successful in the music AI workflow space.
Cool. So how has, we were talking a bit before this, as we're, sort of gathering for the panel. And I think you already brought this up, Matt, there's an important aspect, which is adoption and keeping people in your ecosystem by both providing value and reducing churn. So I'm wondering how Landr has thought about that over the years. I know you've expanded pretty notably into other types of creative activity using sound and music. So maybe you can give us a little bit of an insight into the creative roadmap that you're considering at Landr.
Sure. Cutting right to it. I like it. So we started, as Tristra kind of mentioned, and some of you may know, we started as an AI mastering company, right? That was kind of the thing. And there's a blessing and a curse to that when you kind of do something like what at the time was very disruptive. This is 13 years ago, right? So, and again, I've said this before, but my journey has been very interesting in that company because I came on board not as a startup person or somebody from the corporate world. I come from the creative side, much like Matt does, right? Bass player, badass. Better musician than me for sure. But I come from being a musician and a music producer and having a very successful career doing all that, right? And kind of transitioned into this world at the time, 13 years ago. I've been there for 11 years, but the product actually came out 12 years ago. Into this, not just into like startup music technology, but like incredibly controversial, incredibly disruptive tech at the time, right? We think about generative AI now and right how that is kind of triggering for some people, but for audio engineers, automated mastering was the end of the world, right? It was really, I legitimately lost friends over the fact that I started working for an AI company. And we'll talk more. I don't want to, we can talk more about why I did that and what I think, came out of that. But we started there and we sort of, it's kind of what Matt spoke to. Okay, we have to, because it's an AI-based thing, it had to be a subscription model, right? So we have to have people pay us because there's inference costs involved in what we're doing. So you can't just sell somebody a perpetual license to that, at least at the time. We can now, at least with our mastering product. But so that's a fairly narrow offering. And what we really, luckily, our users kind of dictated the direction of our company where they were just, we were doing mastering. They asked for, okay, well, what's the next step adjacent to mastering? Distribution, become a distributor. What happens before mastering? Well, maybe you use samples and plugins and DAWs. Okay, do that. We need education, do that. So we were really kind of led into this place of being this end-to-end platform where, where when there is things like subscription fatigue, our moat is that we offer more value than any other company on the planet for creator tools, right? You get multiple DAWs. We bought a DAW earlier this year. We own one that we can provide our users, right? We have almost 100 plugins now. We have millions of samples, blah, blah, blah. We kind of fill up every bucket that you need. And if you heard me talk yesterday, I say this, but I'll say it again. The challenge in our industry, and this affects both the products that companies sell and the business model behind them, is the fragmentation component, right? It's the fact that there's a million amazing distributors. There's a million amazing companies doing plugins and samples and all of this, but they're separate subscriptions, right? Or they're sold perpetual license, some of them, right? It's very confusing for users that come in and aren't really savvy to our industry about what they need, when they need it, right? And it's nice. We're kind of a comfort for them, and they can just have one subscription, know that they get a baseline of everything, and then they can start to add on things from other companies that do really amazing stuff, right? That are friends of ours, and which is awesome. And that's kind of been the sweet spot for us and what's allowed us to kind of weather a lot of the storms that have happened in the industry. Even now, and we see there's some really crazy stuff happening in the creator tools space, and we're somewhat immune from that because of our business model.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daniel. Marcus, would you like to let folks know how you're involved with AI, and you have a very unique perspective as a media mogul.
Yes, mogul. These guys are the ones building stuff. I'm just watching them build it and report it in real time. My name's Marcus Lawrence. I'm the editor and founder of Zinstrel, which is a media outlet focused on AI music culture and analysis. And so I'm a classically trained vocalist. I had to drop it because I couldn't pass piano. And so I went the journalism route and said that was my fallback. And I've been writing in the arts and entertainment industry. I started in newspapers. I love writing about music and the industry. Did that for 10 years at a faith-based publication online called New Release Today, and as executive editor. And some years passed after that came to an end, and I missed journalism in the music industry. And so was as a musician, I love writing lyrics and putting them in Suno and other tools, and kicking around ideas, iterating on them, and realized lots of people were doing this and they were in a vacuum. And so I wanted to connect the dots, find out what the good stuff people were doing, not necessarily hype up AI music, but maybe a more balanced approach. In that process, learned just how fast this whole thing is moving. Different tools, lawsuits, the tech evolving. So much is happening every day, and so I realized there was an opportunity to forward that, to further that conversation. From my perspective, as a journalist and a non-builder, like these titans next to me, it's been interesting to see a move away from the prompt and done sort of generation that's happening, and people are asking, what's next? How can I make a song sound like me? And so in the business world, the tools that are set up to achieve that, to offer that, I think are going to be in a really good position. Also, there are really interesting tools that are coming up around AI music. There's a whole cottage industry, people that are charging money for prompt generation, for just Suno. There are, people that are mastering just for Suno and these others like Producer.ai. It's indicative of an industry that's actually maturing and starting to settle. One of the more interesting things that I have run into recently is really niche sort of offerings. Like there's a company called Womb Tunes that just announced Womb Tunes, where you upload a photo of your baby's ultrasound and a little bit of information, and it takes that and it makes a song. That's gonna go nuts. There are people that are gonna spend a lot of money on that once it launches. So it's been interesting to see sort of the personalization, the humanization elements in the business world of AI. That's sort of, I think, where the money's gonna go.
Thanks. That's really fantastic. Interesting examples too. All right. And last but definitely not least, we have Steve. And Steve, you have actually a great multimedia aspect to what you're going to show us. So why don't you introduce yourself and then we can dive into that.
Sure. I'm Steve Stewart. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SongHub, my partner, Jill Berman. And we are developing AI tools for users and rights management for musicians and music rights. And I'd like to just run a quick video and follow that up.
To get it down the ears. No, I'm doing what? Okay. I know what you ask.
Seven million AI songs are created daily, but many human creators aren't paid properly.
Bobby, did you and Sophie work out your song splits?
We did, Dad.
We split it 50-50 on the publishing side, but I gave him 60% on the master.
You're such a giver, honey. Make sure you don't forget to get it registered with your PRO.
Top artists and producers are using generative AI music platforms in their workflows every day to save both time and money.
We've got another hand up. Stewart, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
I am Steve Stewart. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called SongHub. That's www.songhub.co. Are you guys seeing all AI all the time? Is it all stuck on generative, or is there a focus now on rights management?
Great question.
Right. I also don't really care if the startups strongly focusing on AI, unless they have a clear, strong data set they can fit into specifically. Otherwise, it doesn't really make any differentiation, in my opinion.
I don't know. I'm trying to get data clean in the music business, because I think that bad data leads to bad royalties, and we're trying to fix that. For us, blockchain came first because we need a digital ledger that's transparent, accessible, and can't be easily changed. And a single source of data, because every publisher, every PRO has their own data silo. And when they don't match, nobody gets paid. Right. So get the data right first, get it agreed upon, and then start working on optimizing connectivity to it, accessibility to it, et cetera, which AI is perfect for.
Our focus should be on protecting the rights of these creators and their right to earn royalties for their work.
I'm kind of wish you'd asked before you showed the dinner table conversation that we have on a regular basis in our family, but
No humans were harmed in that video, by the way. It was all AI. So we're focused on the creator side, right? A lot of attention's been paid to the copyright infringements and the attribution side. And in our opinion, all the labels have the deepest legal resources there are, and they've got deep, deep pockets. They will solve that. And by the way, I think the payments to those copyright holders, if you look at them, are going to probably be on par with what you get from a Spotify stream. So fighting over that, I know that's a lot of headline stuff, but our focus is, what about the people that are creating? What about the 2 million subscribers to Suno that are creating 7 million songs a day? Who's protecting them? Who's looking out for their rights, their copyrightability, if that's the case? And we know there's a lot of flux back and forth. And we wanted to announce something today that's kind of controversial. If you want to play this, it's literally just a slide, but this is the first PRO designed for generative AI music creators. So where other PROs are focused on catalog that comes from years and years and 100 years ago, we built this from the bottom up specifically to serve this new generation of creators. So a way for them to monetize their work, to identify what's human and what's AI, and to have a repository and a way to license. And again, there are different ways to attach this. Some of it's not copyrightable. We know that at this point, but these things are changing. We want to be ahead of the game and give these people a voice and give them some protection, because no one else seems to really care.
This is why it's worth coming to the 9 a.m. panel, because you get to learn about something really exciting that I mean, you haven't been talking about this elsewhere yet, right?
This is the first, and we thought this conference was important because it was AI and music put together, and you guys being here made it a great event. So thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for entrusting us with your big reveal. That is exciting, and it is one of the. It's easy, I think, for everyone to for musicians who are making maybe have a very different approach to creation compared to, is it? I don't. It kind of makes me a little upset that we say these are AI creators. Like, call them musicians, right?
I would call them musicians, but there's a transition period.
Yeah, we're in a
people
weird
would
spot.
offended if you just say, and there's people that don't want to even hear AI, and I get it.
Yeah.
But it's like saying, I don't want to hear keyboards. I don't want to hear a drum machine. Just don't play that for me. And if you don't want to hear drum machines or auto-tune, you're going to chop off the last 40 years of music, pop music at least.
Yeah.
And you hear nothing. So
I mean, people are going to make the decision they're going to make. But Marcus, I think what you're pointing out is that there's this sort of specialization and really understanding your niche and the audiences, how people will interact with this music or create this music is so important, which is something I think Moises and Landr cracked years ago, because, like I said, you're the OGs. So I was really curious from everyone's perspective, what are current business models in AI that feel promising? We talked about some of the basics things that are very familiar to anyone who's used the internet, such as subscriptions, API fees, and now everyone's becoming familiar with like the token economy, et cetera. Is there something new on the horizon, or even something old that's coming back around that feels really promising, that might help unlock? Because AI music faces some pretty significant basic costs, and if we add licensing to the mix, that's going to be it's a significant overhead. So how are companies solving this equation? Does anyone? Daniel, do you want to jump in there, or would you like to have someone else get it started?
No, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff to talk about there.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the business models themselves, I mean, it's kind of the usual suspects, on the B2C side of stuff, which we deal with, also B2B, which I know both of our companies do, as well. It's the challenges, right, come in Matt addressed this kind of in his opening talk, or the costs involved in this, right, which kind of dictate the way that we have to run our businesses, right? And that is part of the challenge here, right? There's compute costs, there's data costs, there's data licensing costs, right? There's training costs. All of that stuff adds up, right? And some companies are kind of eschewing the data licensing costs and kind of unscrupulously doing their thing on scraping data. So you don't have to go down that route, but that also dictates what you can do on the commercial side, right? This is more about, I think we've been focused a lot on the generation side of the technology so far, right? It's like who can make the best quality music as an example, or vocal or what have you. And then, who can have the most features, the most kind of agency over that. But really the attribution, the licensing side of thing, all of that has to occur to really build a sustainable business that's, legally defendable on top of that, right? So that's kind of where we're heading. One of the things that we've done, just kind of tangentially, is because we did the AI mastering thing, but we have a number of other AI products now, right? And a lot of those it's not technology that we develop. We're working in concert with other companies that have really cool models. As part of my job is to go out and source, like, what are these, like, 1, 2, 3, 4 person companies that are doing amazing stuff that we can kind of be, a funnel to get it out into the industry. So what we bring to the table there is data. So we allowed our users, we have something called the Landr Fair Trade program, which is when, we're a music distributor. We distribute millions of songs. So when you go distribute music with us, you can opt in to be part of our data set that we can then go use when we partner with these other companies who have the actual models, right? So, and then we're sharing revenue from everything, of course, with the users on a recurring basis monthly from any products we create that makes use of their data to train a model. So it's a way for us to kind of, without having to pay a fortune to license in data, sort of share that as a win with our users that choose to opt in, and they can opt out too. All that stuff, is a thing. And yeah, it's kind of empowered us to move forward and offset some of the costs that would otherwise make this sort of prohibitive in the way that we would have to charge for these products at the end of the day.
That's really fantastic. And I know Moises has a data set that they created. Correct, Matt?
Yeah, licensing is quite a bear right now. And the costs of it, the volatility in licensing costs over the last 4 years has been nothing beyond shocking. When you go out if you're going to face the music industry, you need, in my opinion, you have to have the receipts, right? You have to say, if I trained on something, I paid for the master, I paid for the publishing, I know my percentages, I've done my homework, right? This is really important work. That cost variability, I've seen anything from, I want half your company to like $1 a track to I've heard people trying to get 20 even in the last week. And that would be just training to use that sound recording to train maybe chord detection or whatever it's going to be. That volatility by catalog is a real challenge. And then you also, I saw, as the revenue in the industry shifted over the last few years, saw this real money grab by labels that had they saw the opportunity for big checks to license. And there were two tracks to that. There was proactive licensing, where a company would come in and say, I'm trying to acquire this. Let me look at the data. Let me see if it's good. Let me see if it actually improved my models, right? Companies that would do forward-looking due diligence. The other side of that space was insurance policies. Companies that had already trained, had scraped, and were like, we're willing to write any check they could for essentially insurance air cover to say, well, no, I have it now, right? But they're getting it from labels that can't even communicate what they have, or it's wrong. So it was really tough on the the good actors in the space to try and have competitive business models, because you have to incur that cost. In the same way, I'd argue that a Suno user is very different than an artist and a musician that uses these tools in a much harder way, right? Like music is born from breaking things, right? Like that is like sound comes from taking a product to the absolute edge and just bending it. And like that, art is on the edges, right? So someone who produces one song under a Suno subscription and churns out in a month, but that's a lot different than someone who is seeking their artistic voice and needs to hit that button 500 times, because that's art. And so it's not a fair fight right now. But, as we learn more, as the business matures, I mean, Landr knows this way better. Like, if you actually start to see, okay, our user processes about this much, and this is where they find value. Maybe the model doesn't have to be as big. Maybe I can ship some compute to the phone. You start to get a little more mature in where you put these things, so that you can continue to build value without just hiking the cost up on the way.
That's really interesting. So, Steve, from your perspective as folks working in the rights management and metadata space, how does that look? What are some promising business models in your AI realm?
Well, I think again, it's about the generating AI music stuff that's coming through creators, and I would call them musicians, but it is kind of, there's a split, I think, between serious people that are building a career and hobbyists. I don't think we should take away from that, because a lot of these platforms give the ability for people in other areas, disprivileged areas of the world, that don't have access to instruments, teachers, studios, any type of the resources that we may have here, the ability to create and express themselves through music, which I think is really important. And people forget that. They think, oh, I live in LA, I live in New York, I have a studio, I'm signed to a record label, and everybody else can go F off because they're in AI. Well, that's not real. I mean, that's your nice little niche in Manhattan. But what about a kid in South America that wants to play something? What about a girl in Southern Africa that really wants to express herself and finds a tool that she can access on her phone and create something really beautiful? Right? What's up with that? And I think we missed all that in the environment that we're doing all these legal fights. Again, I think they will resolve themselves. This is like smoke. The labels are going to end up trying to own everything like they always do. There's no mystery to that. So follow that. But I do think that if you look at the rights that are being created by these songs that are coming out, again, not all of them right now are copyrightable, but we know that some segment is. Let's take advantage of that. Let's make sure these writers and creators and musicians are compensated properly, because no one's paying attention to this right now. So I'm waving the flag and letting you know that 12 months from now, 18 months from now, we're going to see a lot more attention paid on how to handle these rights, what they mean, because there will be a hit. There will be multiple hits. When you're generating 7 million songs a day, it's inevitable that at some point, 1/10 of the songs are going to have some traction. So let's be ready for that.
And do you feel that the general structures that we have for sort of getting royalties, distributing them, I mean, obviously there's a lot of little blips and problems and infrastructural issues when it comes to royalty collection and payment. But do you feel like the general principle will hold for AI musicians as well?
Well, I think people should be paid for their work. Right? One of the biggest issues now is if you don't have your work properly registered, and this is for legit, let's call them analog musicians, you don't get paid, right? And there's so many places to register, and it's such a convoluted mess. And if your data doesn't line up with your publisher's data, and that publisher's data doesn't line up with the PRO's data in another country, for example, the payment's either delayed or never gets to you. It goes into what's called a black box. And it sits in that box for 36 months, and then it goes to Taylor Swift because she has the highest market share of music. This is not a joke. This is the truth. So we need to fix that, right? One source of data. We use blockchain. We put everything up on blockchain from every file that's uploaded. It's the actual audio file sits on IPFS. So now you can link the audio file to the actual rights data, which we think is critical because there's many songs with the same name. And if you can't identify which song it is, which rights holders are getting paid, right? Nobody knows. So the structure, I think the idea of it is proper. It's how do we bring efficiencies to that space and make it so creators have a frictionless way, an effortless way to be compensated for their work.
Cool, thank you. Marcus, you have sort of a bird's eye view of all these different models, and I think bringing up something like Womb Tunes is really appropriate in that a lot of the business challenge is going to be finding a steady audience. Like, Moises and Landr have musicians, who are consider themselves just, musicians that aren't necessarily quote unquote AI musicians. You're seeing all people trying all sorts of different interesting things. Like what are you in what is the most promising direction that you're seeing?
There's a few. Steve brought up access in other countries. I'm seeing, there's this this AI tool out of Africa, out of Nigeria, called Corin AI, and it was created for a couple of reasons. One, people don't have the money there typically to to hire to go into a studio, and so suddenly you've got people that weren't going to spend money on music at all spending money on music. So that model is already starting to work. They've got like a UN incubator program. It's starting to really catch fire. Also, I'm paying attention to this whole active listening thing that hasn't launched yet. It's this thing where there's this service called Clay that hasn't launched yet. They've got deals with all three of the majors. It's going to be a remixing fan AI sort of platform that we're all just waiting to see what it's like. Spotify's hinted they're doing the same thing. Not hinted, they've shouted it. Suno, with their deal with Warner, we may be seeing more of the same. So a new revenue stream maybe within the traditional, with the majors and some indies, because Merlin's also involved. That could be a stream to watch if people participate. I don't know if they will or not. But the thing with AI music is people are shouting about how it's stealing money from artists. I'm secretly sort of rooting that it breaks the pro rata streaming model, because frankly you should pay the people you're listening to, and instead of stream farms. If you're doing pro rata, you're not able to pay the artists that you're actually listening to. So those are things I'm watching. I'm like, people are screaming about streaming or AI being the enemy with streaming, and it might be streaming itself. That's the enemy.
We looked at we discovered the enemy, and it was us. What is that? I'm totally misquoting that, but that is an interesting question too. In that there are other models that have been proposed for how to divide up the revenue pool when it comes to streaming and DSPs. And AI could be one of those, like the final rock in the well that sort of gets people moving and rethinking, because there's some workable systems that are being used by different services, not by Spotify or Amazon or et cetera, but like by I guess Deezer's experimented with some stuff, SoundCloud, and Vocana is a new indie folks that they've been. Anyway, so that is not a question that's often considered. How do you think AI music creation or distribution or et cetera is going to change that aspect of digital music? If anyone has any thoughts on that, like, could AI music actually? We've talked about people talk about the sort of slop factor that there are folks who are mass producing songs very purposefully as a business. But sometimes a problem like that can lead to solutions that are beneficial to the whole ecosystem. What do you think?
One thing real quick is, I think back in the old Sam Goody days when we would buy, the albums we wanted to buy, there was the artists, the labels, they set the price, and the consumer was willing to pay for that. I think if you take pro rata out, and people are paying for the music they want to listen to, this whole slop thing is not a problem anymore. People are, if they want to spend money on an AI artist, they're choosing to do that. They're allocating their money there, instead of this red herring argument, that AI artists are stealing from from traditional artists. Let's reset and give people the ability to set their prices for their music, and consumers the ability to purchase that. It seems really simple, but we've gotten so far away from it.
You guys understand the difference between pro rata and artist centric, right? Pro rata is where your money goes into a pool and it gets split up amongst the most popular songs. Artist centric is you listen to that song, that artist gets paid. So if you run a 50s diner and all you play is Elvis, and you're paying a licensing fee, right now your money is going to Taylor Swift because she has the biggest market share. Elvis gets very little of that. Whereas in an artist-centric model, Elvis would get all of your money because that's all you play. Just to make that clear.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a couple different variations that can get really creative. Hold on just a second. Oh, I love it. I love Bloomington in the spring. So what are some of the challenges that are that you all are facing or seeing that are confronting that you're confronting as companies or as observers that could endanger some of these possibilities for successful businesses using AI in music?
Oh gosh, I mean,
Where to start?
there's a lot. I mean, we talk a lot about the business model. We're talking a lot about rights, which is cool. You know, the adoption side of it is interesting as well, right? There's a lot of this is a whole rabbit hole, but I mean, the Sunos of the world are are being used by professional creators. I mean, I think it's important everybody understand that it's not something that's just for people posting music on social media or people trying to upload 10,000 songs to Spotify. And
Just to add a like for example, a lot of electronic musicians have really taken to Suno, and there are even specialized algorithms that you can get a subscription or buy access to that will make your music sound like it wasn't made on Suno.
oh, sure, there's
Yeah.
there's all sorts of tricks
Yeah.
to figure out how to fool Surreal and all the Earcam Amplify and all these different companies that have AI detection technology. It's not that difficult to do if you know what you're doing, at least now. But it's the cops and robbers thing, right? It's always going to be one's always going to be chasing the other. But the adoption thing has been interesting. I think I did a panel at NAMM, which is a big conference in Anaheim, right, for music merchants and various things. I've been doing it every year, a panel on AI for about 10 years. And I did one in 2025, right, in January, and the same room I'm always in. And we were talking about Suno, and everyone in the room was like, screw Suno. It was right after the CEO had said the thing about, no one wants to make music anymore, that whole deal, right? And then I did the same panel again. I would do the same one every year intentionally because we're trying to track the progress of things. I did it this year. And half the room were subscribed to Suno. Right. And they're all songwriters and musicians. So that it's basically the same audience in the space of the year. The adoption went through the roof, and people were still kind of on the fence about it. Some people didn't want to admit it. But the fact is, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent, from what we're talking about, once some people start to adopt it, once the songwriting community is the biggest community adopting these tools, by the way. So K-pop songwriters killing Suno all day long because it's almost a sweatshop of songwriting, right? They have to churn out so much content that this accelerates that. And once a segment of them start using it, everyone else has to if they're going to continue to stay employed and keep up with the superpowers those people now have. Now, you can talk about the ethical side of that and whether they should be using Sunos. And Sunos, there's obviously a lot of problems they're kind of voting against their own self-interest by using those tools. And you could argue that, but it kind of becomes table stakes, right? Mm-hmm. So now we can look at kind of what a company like Suno, and there's 10 other companies like that, right? They're just the biggest one, have done and sort of backfill, what other tools they've taken it as far as you can go where you can just prompt and get a pretty decent song, right? You have more agency than that. But what other tools can we use that creators who might not want that level of functionality, right, would actually use, right? That an actual, like that a guitar player would use, right? Who typically is going to be averse to AI and would never use Suno. Well, there's other things that we can use that, creating things that in real time, like Bandmate, that will real time, he can play and it will jam along with him in real time. Using AI, there's other places you can fit in, and that really obviously expands the addressable market for this type of technology when we kind of get out of this just looking at generative AI through the lens of a Suno. And that's not even talking smack about Suno. There's just a lot of other places this can go, separate from even the data sets and ethical concerns and all of that stuff.
That's exactly what I was going to say is the biggest threat, or I guess challenge to these guys is guilty by association. I mean,
That's a great observation. And I do think there needs to be a lot more nuance in the conversation. And some of the, unfortunately, some of the players, like you mentioned, Mikey Schulman made some unfortunate statements in the past. They did not have a comms person. That's why you gotta have a comms person. But they're and the narrative overall can feel a little bit bombastic to your average person, especially a sensitive artist. But I'm not speaking about Suno. I'm speaking about AI in general, like the Sam Altmans and Dario Amadeus of the world. But how do like well-intentioned companies operating in good faith trying to license their data make a case for themselves in this situation?
Well, like the velocity of the worst actor controls so much, right? Like it's so hard. We've talked about speed, we've talked about adoption, but when you have a freight train that's made some questionable licensing decision, right? When that's moving, and I love what Daniel was talking about. Like if you put yourself in the shoes of a songwriter who's trying to carve a living, right? Like you're trying to make your money. Like everyone's trying to put on many different hats in the music industry, in my opinion, to try and make a living and survive and do this. Some of it is art driven, some of it is business driven, right? The song that is your baby that you've worked on for 10 years, you may just not be okay with the idea of it going into Suno because it is your art. If your job is to create songs that have a chance of hitting and can sell and you can pitch and you can demo, you now almost have to. And it's an unfortunate byproduct of what that thing, what that thing does. So I think it's just putting artists in a really tough spot, like a morally difficult situation to navigate. Like if I put a song into Suno and I ask for recommendations, I start to play around with it. It does not take long for me to figure out they scraped my music. Like to know who I am, no one knows what I've played on records nobody's ever listened to. To know who I am, right? To know where I should go in that means you figured something out about me without my permission. It's just, that's what it is. Like, how did you recommend a similar artist to something that I wrote 20 years ago? Right? Wait. What? So if you think about it, like, so now I'm faced with it. I'm faced with the fact that this thing knows more about me than I ever wanted it to, but I have a deadline. Yeah. And I'm going to a writer's room, or and it doesn't matter because rent's due. That's a weird, unfortunate spot.
Yeah, just to unpack that a little bit more. I said kind of people voting against their self-interest earlier. Let's just take a minute and set the table here for what has happened. Because if I told you 5 years ago the scenario I'm about to lay out, you would think that everyone would be crazy for using a product like this. So I have a company, right? And my company is not in the music industry. I'm going to come in from outside the music industry. I'm going to take all of your shit. Right? All of the music that's ever been made, everything you've ever come up with, that's now mine, right? And I'm going to use that. I have no interest in getting permission from you. And when I'm asked if I used your music, I'm going to say, I can't tell you if I used your music, right? That's going to be my response.
Great. I love it.
Because I think you're stupid, right? So I'm going to take all your shit and I'm going to train a model, and I'm going to then try to sell that Soylent Green style, grind up all your stuff and sell it back to you, right? And expect you to pay me for the permission to use the thing that's creating music from your music, right? In addition to that, I'm going to sell that to everyone else in the world to make them competitors to you for the ability to even have a career in the industry that you are trying to have a career in. And in parallel, I'm going to launch, my plan is to launch a streaming service to compete with DSPs like Spotify and Apple Music, which is the way that you monetize the music that I stole from you, that I sold back to everybody else, right? It's a complete mindfuck. But in the cold light of day, that's a baller business model. Right? It's like, but is it ethical? Of course it's not, right? And put the law aside, right? The law is going to be what it is. There's a lot of other things involved in that have nothing to do with the way this probably should work out. But this is why it's such a crazy situation we find ourselves in. Everyone kind of knows that that's what's happened, right? But people find themselves in the position where they have no choice if they want to have a career, that these tools are now available and they have to kind of keep up with the Joneses. And a lot of this stuff, of course, legally will get worked out over the years. And there'll be some compensation, like Steve said. It's going to be probably very minimal on the artist side of things, but for data and things like that. But yeah, this is the craziest time in my 30 plus years of being in the music industry. The past 3 or 4 years.
And the last 30 years have been nuts. Yeah, that was magnificent. I think, but what this is a testimony to is how much pressure a songwriter, for example, can be under. And I think that's something that someone outside of that writing room or outside of their studio or their head, it's difficult for us normies to grasp what that feels like. So I could see some movement over on the side of the table. Steve, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's about gatekeeping, right? And I'm sitting in a university. It's one of the best universities in the world. And it used to be, well, it still is very expensive to go here. I know. And and why is this knowledge being kept from people that maybe can't afford it, right? Why is it that certain artists have privilege and certain artists are just relegated to the slop heap, right? Why is it that we're so protective? And I'm an artist, ex-artist manager. I mean, my entire career representing artists and getting them paid for their work. So I understand that to the core. But to say, I don't think that those other new people should be coming in, because what you're really saying is the more artists, the more people creating art, the less my value is, right? I want to maintain my value. So I don't want any new people in here. You didn't really learn how to play that guitar at a conservatory. I don't know. You're not legitimate, right? I did. I spent the hours and the time and the effort, and you can see the calluses on my hand from learning how to play that guitar. So you should not be able to take advantage of anything that I do or sound like me or learn from me. And I just got to say, when you put your songs out in the world, people are going to listen to them, right? I play music. I've trained on songs. I've learned how to play songs. I've listened to songs thousands of times to learn how to play them. If you think that's wrong, if you think there's something wrong with that, then I've got a whole school, this building actually, built on listening to other people that are writing music that other people learn how to play. There's nothing wrong with that. That's human nature, to continue that songwriting music continuum, and to penalize people for, well, I don't think they should be able to learn this because I spent more time than you, so my song is more valuable than your song. That's kind of where this goes to me. I don't think that's right.
I'm going to jump. I just want to make sure that we're not making the false equivalency between a human learning song, like listening to people's songs, ingesting that and writing their own song, and AI doing that. That's not what we're saying, right? Because those are obviously two very different.
No, I'm talking about you getting a CD 20 years ago and playing it in your CD player 100 times to learn the bass line. That's a machine playing music, someone else's music to you that you're learning from. And it sounds a lot like Suno.
Boy, I think that's off base, but okay.
Why is it off base?
Well, so is your point that if Suno should be allowed to train on everybody's music because and it's okay, I'm not like shutting this down, because it's the same true of me listening to every Beatles record that's ever been and writing music like the Beatles. So copyright should not be a thing on that side of things to protect that music.
Did you pay a license to train on the Beatles songs you listen to?
No.
Why not, Daniel?
No, but this is the bullshit false equivalency. No offense. Actually, I will be offensive on this. That's not accurate. Suno, I also can't generate 1 million songs in an afternoon.
Well, yeah,
right?
Your computer can. You own that computer. That's your computer that you bought and paid for, right? You use it for other things. If you put out an email, it can go to 1,000 people like that. Is there something wrong with that?
It's interesting because in the past, so for instance, there is a small fee that everyone pays to license and reward rights holders who, when you buy a blank cassette, or when you buy a blank CD, or when you purchase a Xerox machine, a copy machine. I don't know, do people still do that? Yeah. I still love copy machines. Anyway, there is a lot to be, so there, in some ways, what we're waiting for is like a society hasn't caught up with how to assess value, how to, because it's always going to be rough, right? And in some ways, I think what we're stuck with at the moment is we're thinking like Spotify, we're thinking pro rata, right? So we're thinking very zero sum. If there's like, I love the idea of everybody making music in some way, shape, or form, or having a significant relationship to the beautiful, emotional, and intellectual tool that music can be, that transforms our world around us, and helps us map our inner worlds. Like, not to get too poetic about it, but I mean, in some ways, that's why both of these statements can kind of be true while contradicting each other. We're stuck in this paradox at the moment because, yes, we want more people making music. I think everyone in the music industry would love if everyone made and loved music, but we're stuck in this weird supply chain problem that then and the problem of competing with yourself is real. If we're thinking of it in the commercial music framework and not as like folk music 2.0, which is another way to look at and that's like that's sort of like the hippie crunchy business model, right? Like we're just like not gonna we're just not gonna have, like, we don't need a business model because, like, because kumbaya, oh yeah, we all did. I
Panel over.
Yeah, sorry. Oh,
Drop the mic.
it's the man.
There goes the zip.
Fritz. All right. What do we do here? I was like hoping oh good.
There
I
you
think
go.
I think I stomped on something.
It's not your fault, Tristan.
Well, I wanted to add
Yeah.
something. I think in the business of all this music, yeah, I actually find myself a Suno user who is deeply conflicted about that because of the real problem with just stealing and sort of getting away with it. But I think the threat and opportunity that exists out there financially for artists, the competition that exists is mediocre versus mediocre. I think slop exists in the human world. Slop exists online, with AI music. Slop is everywhere. You'll hear it on the radio. You'll hear it on your Spotify suggested. It's everywhere. And so maybe what this era is doing is giving an opportunity for people to break the tools, push them, and then do something new to actually be able to push music forward, whether you're using folk instruments or an AI generated platform.
Amazing. Okay, on that, very exciting. I love that we got a little spicy, even though it's early in the morning. We have a few minutes for questions. If there's anyone in the audience wants to step up to that mic right there, correct?
Yep. Anybody want to have questions? Or if there are any questions online as well, I'm wondering if we can just bring up whoever is online, and if anybody wants to raise their hand, they are very welcome to jump in and ask questions to this incredible audience. The thing, I just want to quickly start off by saying this conversation between the two of you about access and democratization and all that, and the structures that we use to monetize and commercialize music. I mean, I think one of the things, being in the Jacob School of Music and being part of the world of music, we know that before the 20th century, how people shared and monetized music was dramatically different from what happened in the 20th century. And what happened in the 20th century was the evolution of technology and recorded sound in particular, but then the monetization of recorded sound led to the legal structures that we now have to be able to navigate into this very uncharted water. I'm thinking of Mozart, Beethoven, all these very famous composers, or even eras of composers. If you think of the classical era, for instance, nobody was talking about who stole from whom or who copied who or who was using whose music. It was very much sort of a very different setting, shall I say, very different economic setting in which musicians were sharing and doing what they were doing. And the thing that I'm wondering about, and I had a conversation last night that reminds me of this conversation, in many ways, some of the maps that we have, some of the legal, cultural, behavioral, performance practice maps that we have of what we've done in the 20th century is informing us about what we might be doing now as we go forward in the 21st century. But in many ways, they're highly inadequate. We really are not able to comprehend how dramatically things are shifting. And so I would be interested to find a panel. What is your view of how you think the sort of the cultural / legal framework that we're dealing with right now, intellectual property laws, will start shifting? The other thing that I want to mention, and you mentioned the third world. I come from South Africa, and I'm very aware that the superstructure of first world economy and laws and the power controls intellectual property in third world countries in ways that are very different to the way that it is controlled in first world countries. And I think that we're at this really interesting moment now where this emergent technology, AI in particular, is upsetting the apple cart. Those gateways that we've used in the past are no longer as powerful as they were. So where do you think we're going? And are there any ideas of how we might be going through a transformation in which we think about the business of music in a very different way?
Yeah, I think we've ended up in a lot of really interesting discussions about how much human interactivity is needed, right, to create like a copyrightable output. It's an interesting question with these AI tools. It's like if you pressed a button, fully generative, not copyrightable, hit a button, prompt, there's nothing to it. But what happens if you made 11 decisions to get to that? What happens if you made 17 decisions? What happens if you revisioned it 7 times? What happens if you brought 10% of your, like, all of a sudden you go, well, wait a second, like, what is that line? Where is that line? And when does generative AI become a synthesizer? Right? I don't know. We don't know. But in unpacking that, like, just because we can doesn't mean we should. I know that's a huge thing, but also to me, it's the value of human creativity and where you put it. Like, where are you putting this human in this? Like, generations of millions of things in a moment that is a machine-driven creation of audio versus the human at the center of the process, right? And so it's a big existential thing, and you know, to the discussion that was going on before, like, I think everyone's got to kind of answer for themselves. I tend to lean pretty hard on one side, which is human at the center. Like, if you can prompt it and you can generate millions of things at a moment's notice, that to me is different than having consumed Beatles music for your entire life and being influenced by it and creating it yourself. To me, it's human art and human creativity. And I think over the course of the next year, that fork has happened, right? And look, generative as a tool, fine. I have no problem with it. Like, license it, pay for it, do it the right way, make it a tool that can be bent and broken. But the sheer scale of it, millions. I mean, again, I think about songwriters and creators, and I'm like, how do you bubble up? How do you compete? How do you keep your human art survive? How does it survive the sheer volume? Like, that's really interesting to me. But I will say, I think AI applications in the music industry, I think the unsung heroes are rights administration and payment. Like, I don't think you're going to hear enough of it. I've come from that world. It is excruciating, matching sound recordings to compositions by territory, by percentage, this is holy smokes. I'm hopeful that in the next year or two, you're going to see some companies, and I'm seeing it now, apply fantastic methodologies to try and solve that problem. You're not going to hear about it, right? Like, payments are just going to change, checks are going to alter, black boxes are going to open, right? There's going to be so much work there. And I want to, like, to what SongHub's talking about, Tracy, what you guys are doing, like, there's so much that I think I want to spend my year appreciating that, because that is a grind. And now think about adding 100 million new unregistered works and sound recordings to that problem. Like, oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
that's what I see it kind of both, like, but to me, it's all human. If it's not human first and art first and culture first, it derails.
Pour one out for the rights administrators. Yeah.
Just to kind of close, I need to be clear, what Steve and I were kind of going back and forth on is not nothing about creations. It's about whether you should license music in a data set versus just allowed to be used whatever you want, right? That's kind of what we were chatting about. So if you've heard me talk at any point in the past 10 years about this topic, I always come back to the same thing when it comes to kind of what I think the future of creativity empowered by a lot of these tools is, which I support, by the way, which is I look at DJ culture as an example of this, right? Do we consider DJs to be creative, right? Are they creative people? And if you say yes, what are DJs really doing? They're curators of music, right? And they are selecting that music at the right time based upon vibe they see in a room, and they're playing that music. And of course, there's performance aspects to that as well. Curation is creation at that point, right? At some line. And that's really what we're, if this, you've heard this said a million times, but if you have taste, right? Whether I can pick up and play a guitar and impart my taste on that guitar, or I can, prompt something and make decisions based upon what I like and do not like, and either select that or continue to go down the rabbit hole of making adjustments on that, that is creativity. That is being creative, regardless of what the instrument is, right? And this is where I do 100% agree that these tools allow people, yes, everybody has a free DAW on their phone, right? You don't need an AI tool to be creative, right? You have a voice. We're all born with that, right? You can sing, you can rap, spoken word, poetry, whatever. And there's devices that are freely available to pretty much everybody at the world at this point that has a digital device. AI obviously lowers the barrier to that. And I think that's cool. Yes, it's like, I mean, if you've heard it a million times, you can use a hammer to build a house or murder somebody, right? Yes, people are going to use those tools to make a million songs and flood Spotify, but other people, it is genuinely going to unlock not only a creative experience for them, but new genres of music, and it's going to push music. And by my breaking technology, man, I came up under Trent Reznor and Adrian Belew, right? I was brought into this industry taught by people who broke technology to make new sounds, and AI is that tool for a lot of people. And we're going to see, I think the future of music is going to be better because of it, because we're going to get out a lot of the ruts in popular music that we tend to be in. So I'm 100% for it. You know, even though we went back and forth on that a little bit, it's ultimately, I think, going to be a net positive.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now,
I think we have somebody online.
we have someone online. Awesome.
Hi, yes. We have a question from Sherry, who unfortunately can't unmute herself. This is directed mainly at Matt and Daniel, but it's also open to the whole panel. Briefly, there was a mention of pros versus hobbyists and their differences in sentiment and incentives around using AI. Has that ever come up as a consideration on the level of product design? Like how you design AI products differently for pros versus hobbyists? However you or your companies draw that line.
100%, and a great question. And what we've uncovered with the user base, so 70 million now, roughly, right? When I joined the company 4 years ago and we were at a few million, I thought the cap of this business might have been 10 to 20. Like I was like, that's where this will be. Like, and that would be an incredibly successful business, and I'd be happy. And the number keeps going up. And why the number keeps going up? We've unlocked sort of beginner musicians at a different stage than would normally have entered this sort of pipeline of tools. And it started because we're slowing a song down and letting you learn it. So because of that, we've had to make a ton of product decisions because we never want to lose that, what we've managed to pull out of the world and these users, which is this simplicity, this beginning moment, right? And so we sit there and we're like, well, we could do, we have a part, we're doing all sorts of like pro-based things and voice synthesis and these like really big projects, so you can move these things around at the pro level. But what's the most interesting conversations are about like, man, how did you get that first person to like pull the guitar out and play along? And then to look at that and go, that spark, right? That beginner's eye to like that first moment, right? When you think, and we now as a culture like, from the organization have to think about that. It's like, remember that first time you actually played along with a song? You had 3 chords and there was a 3 in the song and you did it and you sparked. Right? And then that led you to the next thing and that led you to the next thing. And the next thing, you're at a conservatory, right? But there are these moments, right? There are these. It's about 4-step. It's like 4-step plan.
There's a book about that.
Yeah. But that journey has to start, and that moment, a spark, and that inspiration. So from a product standpoint, we're actually going to be. We spend so much time talking about. Okay, I don't care how many models are behind it. I don't care how you get there. Can you do it in one button? And can the value be instantaneously felt by that user? Right? Like, does the wow factor happen? And we have to, as a company, stay there because of the user base that we've started to galvanize versus getting like tweakier and tweakier and tweakier. So we have to make that, our users are guiding us in that regard.
Yeah, that's a great question because it's the most difficult challenge in product development and UX UI, right? Is like, we need, and this comes back to AI, right? These AI tools are empowering a whole new generation of creators who normally might be off gaming, but now they're kind of generating some music, right? So some of those people are always going to be hobbyists and just be casually doing that and like, churn after making one song on Suno or whatever. And some of those people, this is a net positive, will kind of matriculate on to buy a microphone or maybe learn how to play one of the songs they generated with AI, right? Or come to Landr and start using some of our tools. So we want to keep the door open for them by keeping the tools simple but powerful. But at the same time, we need to kind of follow them in their journey as though they move on, right? We don't want to just there's a date where our tools are going to be too simple for you. You need to go somewhere else, right? We want to try to make this accessible to everybody. And it's difficult when you're designing products to do that. But AI is even helping us with that because it's also, we're able to kind of follow along as somebody, is learning and clicking on new features and going in new directions. So it's just having like a simple and advanced view. Now you can start to sort of reveal, different features of a product as someone, is getting a little bit more advanced. So it's one of the nice things about AI is, and we're not there yet, but we can really make a product responsive to what a user is ready for. And I think that's really part of the future of product development. We're not there yet necessarily, but it's on the way.
Very cool.
Real
you got-
quick,
what-
just
yeah,
one- yeah,
quick
I
focus.
say this a lot on Zinstrel. It's whoever can convert these prompt to song generators into DAW users. That is the game. That is in the business world. That's
Very important.
And be clear,
observation.
companies like Suno are going to try to do that as well,
Yeah.
right? They're going to try to, and they should
already
try to
are.
play, and they already are trying to play, even this past week, right?
Yeah.
Try to play in both spaces and keep those people on platforms so they don't just go off to companies like ours, which makes sense.
I think we have one more question waiting
We
very
do.
patiently, or
Yeah, we do have one more question, and I want to mention that we're just about to hit our 10:30 mark, so we'll need to wrap this up sometime soon as well.
So I think we actually mostly answered it. But before there was a music business, music was more of a social and cultural activity. 19th century parlor music, people got together. My understanding is there was a lot more music literacy in terms of people being able to read sheet music, which was actually the business maybe. So, for people who are trying to engage in music, not to become successful financially, but because it's just a social activity, what is the role of AI superpowers, if any? I mean, is there a right approach to that? Is it something that could assist? It shouldn't be in the loop at all. What do you think about people just getting together to play music with each other because they want to be together playing music?
I always told artists when I managed artists that there's nothing wrong with you playing on your couch to your family and friends. That's absolutely legitimate and valid. The minute you sign a contract, or the minute you walk down to the corner bar and say, I want a beer if I play here tonight, or I want $100, or I want 10% of the door, you've now exploited your music. You've now made a deal with the devil. You've sold out. So if you don't want to do that, which is entirely your right and completely 100% valid, don't take that money. Don't sign that contract. Play for your friends and family. And it's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. I think with AI, it gives you a full band, right? Say you're a very talented guitar player, but you don't know how to sing. You don't know how to play drums. You don't know how to play keyboards. This will supply you with that backing mechanism in a minute. And if you don't like it, change it. You want a different piano instead of a Fender Rhodes? Change it. You want a different bass player? Change it. It's like, it's, I don't know if you played with it, but it is amazing. It is a superpower, like Daniel was mentioning, and it gives people that don't have the full resources, don't have the time or the budget or the recording studio in their backyard to be able to play stuff that sounds professionally done, that your friends and family can enjoy in your own neighborhood, in your own culture, without worrying about monetizing it or commercializing it or selling it or exploiting it to anybody.
Yeah. There's a strong online community of people that are making songs with AI, and it's called AI Underground. I'm embedded in there watching what creators do, and they're each other's biggest fans. So it's not like it's taking away the social, it's just moving it for some people. It's moving it to Discord, to Reddit, to these other places, and I think it's going to be more important, though, the performance aspect. Live performance it's going to just push us in two directions: more online and more in the seats.
And there is I think AI will play a role in music games, which could become more and more about the creation side. And there's already karaoke games that use AI. There's all sorts of ways I think that people could, things that we haven't seen yet. Just like, DJs, hip hop created a bunch of new ways to make music together, like ciphers, right? Or, a battle format. So there's a lot of, who knows? I mean, people are always coming up with ways to socialize, have contests, do crazy stuff together. And I think AI will probably, there's going to be some people that break the tools, as Matt likes to say, in order to have more fun together.
Yeah, and last thing for me, I mean, look at what's one of the things that's a barrier to people getting in a room and playing together, right? For me, anxiety, I think, and not being confident in your skill set. Look at what a company like Matt's company does, right? It allows people to practice and remove components of a song and get more confident in their skills, right? And even on the generative AI side of things, being able to compose songs, and I learned how to play the guitar part, it gets me closer to getting in a room potentially, right, with people as I become more confident in my playing and my songwriting and all that kind of stuff. I do think, again, that is everyone going to treat it that way? Of course not, right? But I do think there is a potential glass half full for that to help. And certainly in the live, what he said is totally true. There's going to be so much more reliance, I think, on live performance and people wanting to go see how the sausage is made. If we all can make a song in our pocket, right? I respect, I like watching artists that can do things I can't do, right? It's the thing that impresses me about that. And I think we're going to see more reliance on musicianship and appreciation for that in a live setting because of what's happening in the AI side.
I have a sneaking suspicion that more and more artists are going to start to window or withdraw their content or start to release it like off the grid. Because if you believe that art is on the edge, and the second that you post, because of the way that these things are trained without license, you can argue that the second that you put your work into the world, it's dragged to the mean, right? Immediately, like you've helped the mean, right? You're finding the mean. And so I think that you're going to start to see people say, now you got to see me live, and we're back to CDs and or some other medium. And because I want to exist on the fray, and I don't want my content pulled into the middle without my permission. And so I'm hopeful that what this leads to is a rejuvenation of live performance. I hope, because that's where everyone's making their money, right? Like, you got to make your money somewhere. This anxiety thing, I think, is really real. I think everyone's doing this so much that it's getting even harder to get into a room with somebody. And
you also think you're going to get filmed every time you get out anything. You're constantly exposed.
Those basement rehearsals, when I remember the basement, I am so glad no one has a tape of me learning how to play, right? Like, because I thought I was awesome. And I'll tell you what, no, terrible. Right. But you know what? I was 16, my long hair part of the middle, and I was rocking in my bass. That needed to live there. Right. My first band needed to stay there. And I remember, the first way you record. Anyways, I think those moments, to gain confidence, there has to be a safe place to do it so that you can then enter the sphere and get over the performance anxiety of seeing what happened it is to react. I hope that, look, if you can use a tool and become more confident that, I play a riff and I get some sort of feedback, and then I can start to interact, and I can start to right? Like, if you're getting real-time information on a call and response or something like that, and you could sit there and practice that so that it doesn't scare the daylights out of you. Somebody looks at you and goes, how about this? Right? Like, whoa, great. So I'm optimistic, but I do think artists are about to start hiding their work.
And that also gets into, and we won't get into this, AI in education, right? Where you actually have a personal trainer that responds to your playing and really is giving you, a lot of people are too scared to go take lessons, man. Like, even that is a big thing, right? So anyway, there's a lot of room for growth here. It's not all, doom and gloom as sometimes we can focus on, because those are the headlines
Yay.
you read.
Thank you for going from gloom to bloom. And thank you so much, audience, for listening, both online and in person.